The woman I was ready to marry looked me in the eyes and said she never loved me at all. 3 months later, the entire city would be talking about what happened next. But on that cold Thursday evening, Marcus Bennett stood alone in his penthouse, staring at a skyline that suddenly felt empty. At 34 years old, Marcus had everything most people spent their lives chasing. He owned luxury hotels across the country, a successful real estate empire, and investments that generated more money in a single day than many families earned in a year. Business magazines called him one of the most influential entrepreneurs in America. Yet none of that mattered at the moment. The only thing Marcus could hear was the voice of the woman he thought he would spend the rest of his life with. Just an hour earlier, he had returned home unexpectedly and overheard a conversation that shattered something inside him. His girlfriend, Brittany, had been laughing on the phone with a friend. "Of course I do not love him," she said casually. "But do you know how rich Marcus Bennett is? One wedding, and my future is secured forever." Marcus remembered standing frozen outside the room as every word hit harder than the last. "He is obsessed with me anyway," Brittany continued. "Men like him are easy when they have more money than trust." Marcus had walked away before hearing anything else. He did not yell. He did not argue. He simply left. Now, standing beside the massive window overlooking the city lights, he wondered how many times this had happened before, how many smiles had been fake, how many compliments had been rehearsed, how many promises had been attached to a price tag. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Marcus said. The door opened, and an older man stepped inside carrying 2 cups of coffee. It was Samuel, his longtime driver and closest friend. Unlike most people around Marcus, Samuel never treated him like a celebrity. He treated him like a human being. Samuel handed him a cup. "You have not slept, have you?" Marcus shook his head. "I keep asking myself the same question." "Which is?" Marcus stared at the city below. "Would anyone love me if I had nothing?" Samuel remained silent for a moment. Then he said something that Marcus would never forget. "The problem is nobody ever gets the chance to find out." Marcus turned slowly. Samuel continued. "People see your penthouse before they see your heart. They see your success before they see your character. They see your money before they see you." Marcus frowned. "So what am I supposed to do?" Samuel shrugged lightly. "Disappear." Marcus laughed bitterly. "That is impossible." "Maybe not." Samuel leaned forward. "If you really want the truth, stop being Marcus Bennett for a while." The room fell silent. At first the idea sounded ridiculous, yet the more Marcus thought about it, the less ridiculous it seemed. By sunrise, he had made a decision that would change everything. 1 month later, the billionaire who once appeared on magazine covers stepped onto a crowded city street wearing worn-out clothes, carrying an old backpack, and looking like a man who had lost everything. Nobody recognized him. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Bennett was completely invisible. The first thing Marcus Bennett learned about being invisible was how quickly people stopped seeing him as human. 3 days after leaving his old life behind, the excitement of his experiment had completely disappeared. Hunger was no longer an idea. It was a constant ache twisting inside his stomach. The warm penthouse, the private chef, the luxury cars, all of it felt like memories from another lifetime. On a humid afternoon, Marcus sat alone outside a convenience store watching people rush past without making eye contact. Some glanced at him briefly before looking away. Others acted as if he did not exist at all. Earlier that morning, he had walked into a small diner, hoping to buy a sandwich with the little cash he carried. Before he could even reach the counter, an employee asked him to leave. The embarrassment stayed with him long after he walked out the door. For years, he had donated money to charities and shelters. He thought he understood hardship. Now he realized he had only observed it from a distance. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Marcus continued walking through the city. His legs felt heavy. His shirt clung to his skin. He passed office buildings filled with people chasing careers, and restaurants filled with people enjoying lunch. Nobody paid attention to the man carrying an old backpack. Eventually, the smell of grilled food drifted across the street. Marcus followed it until he reached a small food truck parked beside a busy corner. Several customers stood in line while music played softly from a portable speaker. Behind the counter worked a young woman with warm brown eyes and a calm smile. She moved quickly between customers, taking orders and handing out meals without losing her patience. This was Ava Brooks. Marcus stopped a few feet away. He hated asking for help, yet his stomach made the decision for him. Slowly he approached the truck. Before he could speak, another woman standing beside Ava looked him up and down with obvious disapproval. This was Jasmine Brooks, Ava's older sister. Jasmine folded her arms. "We are not running a charity." Marcus lowered his eyes. "I was just wondering if there was any leftover food." Jasmine shook her head immediately. "There is always someone looking for a handout." Several customers glanced toward Marcus. He felt the familiar sting of humiliation. "It is okay," he said quietly. "I understand." He turned to leave. "Wait." Marcus stopped. Ava had spoken. She looked at him carefully for a moment. There was no judgment in her expression, no suspicion, only concern. Without another word, she picked up a container and filled it with grilled chicken, rice, and vegetables. Jasmine stared at her in disbelief. "Ava, food costs money." Ava ignored the comment and handed the meal to Marcus. "Here." Marcus looked at the container as if he could not believe it was real. "I cannot pay for this." Ava smiled gently. "I know." For several seconds he simply stood there. Nobody had shown him kindness in days, real kindness. Not because they expected something in return, not because they wanted recognition, just kindness. "Thank you," he said quietly. Ava nodded. "Everybody needs help sometimes." Marcus sat at a nearby bench and began eating. The food was simple, but it tasted better than anything he remembered. Across the street, people continued rushing through their busy lives. Yet for the first time since leaving his old world behind, Marcus felt something he had not felt in weeks. Hope. As he looked back toward the food truck, Ava was already helping another customer. She had no idea who he really was, and somehow that made her act of kindness mean even more. What Marcus did not realize was that this brief encounter would become the most important moment of his life. Some people enter your life with grand promises, but the people who change your life forever usually arrive through the smallest acts of kindness. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus found himself returning to Ava's food truck almost every afternoon. At first, he told himself it was because the meals were affordable and the location was convenient. But deep down, he knew the truth. He came back because of Ava. Every day she greeted customers with the same warm smile, even when business was slow and exhaustion showed in her eyes. Marcus began noticing things other people ignored. He noticed how she always gave an extra drink to elderly customers. He noticed how she quietly paid for meals when struggling parents came up a few dollars short. Most of all, he noticed how she never treated anyone as if they were beneath her. One afternoon, rain clouds gathered overhead while Ava cleaned tables beside the truck. Marcus helped stack a few empty chairs. "You do not have to do that," Ava said. Marcus shrugged. "I should earn my lunch somehow." Ava laughed softly. It was the first time Marcus had heard that sound, and for reasons he could not explain, it stayed with him long after the conversation ended. As the days passed, they talked more. Not about money or success or status. They talked about favorite books, childhood memories, and the strange directions life sometimes takes. Marcus carefully avoided details about his past, but listening to Ava became one of the best parts of his day. One evening, after most customers had left, Marcus noticed Ava sitting quietly on the back step of the truck. Her shoulders looked tense. "Everything okay?" he asked. Ava forced a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Just tired." Marcus sat down a few feet away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ava sighed. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would have looked like if things had gone differently." Marcus turned toward her. "What do you mean?" Ava stared at the parking lot. "I wanted to become a nurse." Marcus blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "I was accepted into a great program. Then my dad got sick. Medical bills piled up. After he passed away, somebody had to help my mother keep everything together." Her voice remained calm, but Marcus could hear the disappointment beneath it. "So I left school and started working full-time." Marcus felt a weight settle in his chest. For years, he had sat in boardrooms discussing numbers that seemed enormous to everyone else. Yet here was a woman whose dream disappeared because life became too expensive. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. Ava thought for a few seconds. "Sometimes, but my family needed me," she smiled faintly. "And honestly, I would do it again." Marcus looked away, suddenly overwhelmed by admiration. Most people he knew spent their lives chasing what they could gain. Ava spent hers protecting the people she loved. At that moment, Jasmine walked out carrying supplies. "Ava, stop telling sad stories and get back to work." Ava rolled her eyes. "See what I deal with?" Marcus laughed. Jasmine shook her head dramatically before heading back inside. As the sun began setting, Ava stood and stretched. "Life is not perfect," she said, "but it could be worse." Marcus looked at her carefully. "You really believe that?" Ava smiled. "I do." Then she said something that stayed with him for the rest of the night. "I would rather struggle beside a good person than live comfortably beside someone who only cares about themselves." Marcus felt his heartbeat slow, because for the first time since leaving his old life behind, he realized he was no longer searching for proof that genuine people existed. He had already found one. The more time Marcus spent around Ava, the more dangerous his secret became. What had started as an experiment was turning into something he could no longer control. Every morning he woke up thinking about her. Every afternoon he found reasons to walk past the food truck. Every evening he replayed their conversations in his mind. For years, Marcus had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Investors wanted access. Reporters wanted stories. Business partners wanted deals. Even relationships often felt like negotiations disguised as affection. But Ava never asked for anything. One Saturday afternoon, the food truck was unusually busy. A local festival had brought hundreds of people into the neighborhood. Customers lined up down the sidewalk while music drifted through the warm air. Marcus spent hours helping carry supplies, clean tables, and organize boxes. Nobody paid him much attention. To everyone else, he was simply a struggling man trying to make himself useful. Around sunset, the crowd finally began thinning. Ava sat on a folding chair and stretched her tired legs. "I think today felt longer than an entire week," she joked. Marcus laughed. "You handled it pretty well." Ava smiled. "That is because I had help." For a moment, neither spoke. The comfortable silence surprised Marcus. Most people felt the need to fill every quiet moment. With Ava, silence never felt awkward. It felt peaceful. A few minutes later, Helen Brooks arrived carrying grocery bags. Marcus had met Ava's mother several times over the past few weeks. She treated everyone with kindness and seemed genuinely grateful whenever Marcus helped around the truck. "You two still here?" Helen asked with a smile. "Somebody has to make sure Ava goes home eventually," Marcus replied. Ava rolled her eyes dramatically. I'm sitting right here, Helen laughed before heading inside the truck. As darkness settled over the parking lot, Ava and Marcus continued talking. The conversation drifted from childhood memories to future dreams. If you could do anything tomorrow, what would it be? Ava asked suddenly. Marcus hesitated. The truthful answer was impossible. He could buy another company tomorrow. He could travel anywhere in the world. He could make decisions that affected thousands of employees. Instead, he chose a different answer. I think I would want a simple life. Ava looked surprised. Really? Marcus nodded. Peace seems underrated. Ava smiled softly. I understand that. Then she looked toward the street. Sometimes people think success solves everything. Marcus felt his chest tighten. And does it? Ava shook her head. No. I think who you become matters more than what you own. Her words hit harder than she realized, because she was speaking directly to the fear Marcus had carried for years, a fear that nobody would ever see beyond his wealth. The following week, heavy rain forced the food truck to close early. Ava and Marcus sat beneath a small shelter, waiting for the storm to pass. Rain hammered the pavement, while distant thunder echoed across the city. Can I tell you something? Ava asked quietly. Marcus nodded. I do not trust people easily. She stared at the rain. Life teaches you to be careful. Marcus felt his stomach twist. That makes sense. Ava turned toward him. But somehow, I trust you. The words landed like a weight on his chest. For a moment, he could not respond, because the woman he was falling in love with had just given him something priceless. Trust. And the painful truth was that he had not fully earned it. As the rain continued falling around them, Marcus realized he was no longer afraid of losing the experiment. He was afraid of losing Ava. The truth has a way of finding people no matter how carefully it is hidden. Nearly 2 months had passed since Marcus first met Ava, and for the first time in years, he felt genuinely happy. The food truck had become more than a place to eat. It had become the center of his world. Every day brought another conversation, another laugh, another reason to stay. Yet with every passing week, the secret he carried grew heavier. One Thursday afternoon, business was unusually slow. Dark clouds hung overhead, and only a handful of customers stopped by for lunch. Ava was delivering an order to a nearby office building, while Helen visited a supplier across town. That left Jasmine alone at the truck organizing receipts and old newspapers. She worked in silence until a familiar face on the front page caught her attention. At first, she barely looked at it. Then her eyes narrowed. Slowly, she picked up the newspaper and stared harder. The article featured a photograph of one of the most recognizable businessmen in the country, a billionaire entrepreneur who had mysteriously disappeared from public life months earlier. Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. She looked from the photograph to the memory forming in her mind. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same face. Her hands froze. No way, she whispered. For several seconds, she simply stared at the page. Then she grabbed her phone and searched for more images. Every result confirmed the same impossible conclusion. The homeless man who sat outside their food truck every day was Marcus Bennett, one of the richest men in America. At that exact moment, Marcus appeared from across the street, carrying a box of supplies he had volunteered to pick up. He smiled casually as he approached. Looks like the rain is coming again. Jasmine said nothing. Marcus immediately sensed something was wrong. Then he saw the newspaper in her hands. The color drained from his face. Neither spoke. They simply stared at each other. Finally, Jasmine lifted the paper. You want to explain this? Marcus felt his stomach drop. Months of careful planning collapsed in a single second. Jasmine, do not. Her voice was sharp. Do not even try to lie. Marcus placed the box down slowly. Across the street, traffic continued moving. People hurried along sidewalks. Nobody noticed the moment everything changed. "How long?" Jasmine demanded. Marcus lowered his eyes. "Since the beginning?" Jasmine laughed in disbelief. "You let us believe you were homeless? It is complicated." "No." She shook her head. "Actually, it is very simple." The disappointment in her voice hurt more than anger would have. Before Marcus could respond, Ava appeared at the corner carrying a delivery bag. She smiled when she saw him. Then she noticed Jasmine's expression. The smile vanished immediately. "What happened?" Ava asked. Neither answered. Jasmine slowly handed her the newspaper. Ava glanced down casually. Then her entire body went still. For a moment, she did not understand what she was seeing. Then realization crashed into her. Her eyes moved from the photograph to Marcus, back to the photograph, then back to Marcus again. The delivery bag slipped from her hand. "Marcus Bennett?" she whispered. The sound of his real name coming from her felt unreal. Ava stared at him, as if she had never seen him before. "Tell me this is not you." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came. The silence answered everything. Ava took a step backward. Hurt replaced confusion. Then betrayal replaced hurt. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. Marcus felt his heart sink because for the first time since meeting Ava, he did not know how to answer. Sometimes the hardest part of losing someone is realizing they are still standing right in front of you. Ava could not stop staring at Marcus. The man she had trusted for weeks suddenly felt like a stranger. Every conversation replayed in her mind, with a different meaning now. Every answer he avoided. Every detail he never shared. Every moment she defended him. The realization hurt far more than she expected. "Say something," Jasmine demanded. Marcus looked at Ava. "I never wanted to hurt you." Ava laughed softly, but there was no happiness in it. "That is your explanation?" Marcus took a slow breath. "No, it is the truth." Customers nearby had begun noticing the tension. A few people glanced toward the food truck curiously. Ava folded her arms tightly across her chest. "How long were you planning to keep pretending?" Marcus hesitated. "I did not know." "You did not know," Ava repeated. "You spent weeks letting me believe you had nothing." "I was trying to find out if people could care about me without knowing who I was." The words sounded weak even to him. Ava shook her head. "And you decided everyone around you should become part of your experiment?" Marcus lowered his eyes. He had asked himself the same question many times during the past month. The difference was that now he had no good answer. Helen arrived a few minutes later and immediately sensed something was wrong. Jasmine handed her the newspaper. Helen read the headline, looked at Marcus, and slowly closed her eyes. Unlike Jasmine, she wasn't angry. She simply looked disappointed. Somehow, that felt even worse. "Is it true?" Helen asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "Yes." Silence settled over the group. Cars passed. Music played from a nearby store. Yet the world suddenly felt very far away. Ava finally spoke again. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Marcus looked at her. "It is not that you are rich." A voice trembled slightly. "It is that I trusted you." Those words landed harder than anything else. Marcus would have preferred anger. Anger could fade, but broken trust was different. "Everything I felt was real," he said. Ava looked away. "I do not even know which parts of you were real." Marcus wanted to explain everything. He wanted to tell her about Brittany, about the loneliness, about the years of wondering whether anyone truly saw him. But none of it sounded important anymore, not compared to the damage sitting in front of him. That evening, Ava locked herself inside her apartment bedroom. She ignored texts, ignored calls, ignored everyone. Across the city, Marcus sat alone in a luxury penthouse that suddenly felt colder than any sidewalk he had slept on. His phone remained in his hand for nearly an hour before he finally called the only person who knew the entire truth. Samuel answered immediately. "She found out." It was not a question. Marcus closed his eyes. "Yes." "And?" Marcus stared out at the city lights. "I think I lost her." Samuel remained quiet for a moment. "She is angry because she cared." Marcus laughed bitterly. "That doesn't help." "Maybe not today," Samuel replied. "But remember something. She is not upset because you are Marcus Bennett. She is upset because she believed Daniel trusted her enough to be honest." The words stayed with Marcus long after the call ended. Meanwhile, Ava sat alone beside her bedroom window, looking at the city skyline. Part of her wanted to hate him. It would have been easier. But every time she remembered the man who listened to her dreams, who helped at the food truck, who sat beside her in the rain, the anger became complicated. Because beneath the lies was another truth she could not escape. Somewhere along the way, she had fallen in love with him. And that was exactly what made the betrayal hurt so much. Some mistakes cannot be fixed with an apology. Marcus learned that lesson quickly. During the next several days, every attempt to reach Ava ended the same way. His calls went unanswered. His messages remained unread. Even when he stopped by the food truck, Ava found reasons to leave before he could speak with her. The distance between them felt larger than the city itself. For the first time in years, Marcus discovered there was a problem his money could not solve. One morning he arrived at his corporate headquarters for the first time since returning to public life. Employees greeted him warmly. Executives rushed to update him on projects. Reporters waited outside hoping for interviews. A few months earlier, the attention would have felt normal. Now it felt exhausting. As Marcus stood inside a conference room overlooking the city, he realized something strange. He would have traded every luxury in the building for 5 honest minutes with Ava. Later that afternoon, Samuel joined him for lunch. "You look worse than when you were sleeping on park benches," Samuel said. Marcus laughed softly. "That is because I deserve it." Samuel studied him carefully. "Maybe, but feeling guilty forever will not help anyone." Marcus stared at his untouched meal. "What am I supposed to do?" "Stop trying to impress her." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" Samuel leaned back. "You keep thinking like a billionaire. You are trying to solve an emotional problem with resources. Ava never cared about resources." The words lingered in Marcus's mind long after lunch ended. That evening, he drove past the food truck without stopping. Across the street, he watched customers come and go. He watched Ava smile politely while serving meals. He watched Helen work through obvious exhaustion. Then he noticed something else. Business was slower than usual. Several expensive repairs were needed. The refrigerator unit occasionally shut off. The truck itself was showing signs of age. Marcus could have written a check and solved everything in 10 seconds. But he knew Ava would reject it immediately. So instead, he chose a different approach. Over the following weeks, anonymous acts of kindness began appearing around the neighborhood. A local community center suddenly received funding to repair its roof. A scholarship program opened for students pursuing nursing careers. A food pantry received enough supplies to serve hundreds of additional families. Nobody knew where the money came from. Marcus made sure of that. He never attached his name to anything. Meanwhile, Ava continued trying to move forward. She focused on work. She focused on helping her mother. She focused on ignoring how much she missed Marcus. Some days, she succeeded. Other days, she failed. One afternoon, a representative from the community center stopped by the food truck. "Have you heard?" he asked excitedly. "Heard what?" Ava replied. "Some anonymous donor paid for half the neighborhood improvement projects this month." Helen smiled. "That is wonderful." Ava agreed, but something about the story stayed with her. The donor had refused publicity, refused recognition, refused interviews. That sounded familiar. A few days later, another surprise arrived. A letter addressed to Ava appeared at the food truck. There was no return address, no signature, just a short note. The handwriting was neat and careful. The message read, "Do not give up on the dream you once had. The world still needs nurses with hearts like yours." Tucked inside was information about a nursing scholarship that had just become available. Ava stared at the paper silently. Her pulse quickened. She could not prove who sent it, but deep down, she had a feeling. And for the first time since learning the truth, she found herself wondering not whether Marcus had lied to her, but whether the man she fell in love with had ever truly disappeared at all. There comes a moment when walking away feels easier than fighting for something broken. Marcus reached that moment on a quiet Tuesday morning. Nearly 6 weeks had passed since Ava learned the truth, and despite everything he had done, the distance between them remained. The scholarship letter had been delivered. The community projects had been completed. The neighborhood was improving. Yet none of it changed the one thing that mattered most. Ava still was not part of his life. Standing inside his office, Marcus stared at a plane ticket resting on his desk. A major international expansion project required him to relocate for several months. Before meeting Ava, he would have accepted immediately. Now it felt like surrender. Samuel entered, carrying a folder, and immediately noticed the ticket. "You are leaving?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Maybe it is what everyone needs." Samuel sat down across from him. "Or maybe you are giving up." Marcus looked out the window. "I cannot keep asking someone to forgive me." Samuel sighed. "Maybe not. But you can decide whether she is worth waiting for." Across town, Ava was having a difficult morning herself. She had been accepted into the nursing scholarship program. Helen had cried when they received the news. Jasmine had celebrated louder than anyone. Yet despite the excitement, something felt incomplete. That afternoon, Ava stopped by the community center to deliver meals. While she was there, she noticed a plaque being installed near the entrance. Curious, she asked the director about it. "Who was the donor?" The director smiled. The funny thing is, he did not want anyone to know. Ava felt her heart beat faster. "You know who it was," the director nodded. "Eventually we figured it out. Marcus Bennett." Ava looked down immediately. "Oh," the director laughed softly. "I've met a lot of wealthy people. Most of them want recognition. He spent months helping this neighborhood without taking credit for a single thing." Ava remained silent. The director continued. "Whatever happened between you two is your business, but I think you should know something. Every project you see here happened because he believed people deserved better." Those words followed Ava for the rest of the day. That evening, she sat alone on a bench outside the food truck after closing. The city lights flickered in the distance, while cool air drifted through the parking lot. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to remember the good memories without immediately thinking about the lies. She remembered the man who carried supplies without being asked, the man who listened when she talked about her father, the man who believed in her nursing dream before she believed in it herself. Suddenly, Jasmine sat down beside her. "You're thinking about him again." Ava smiled weakly. "Is it that obvious?" Jasmine nodded. "Very." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jasmine surprised her. "I was angry when I found out the truth." Ava looked over. "You were furious." "Yes," Jasmine laughed softly. "But I have also been watching him." Ava frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean most people with his money would have disappeared and found someone else." Jasmine looked toward the empty street. He stayed. Ava stared at the pavement. Deep down, she knew her sister was right. The next morning, while helping Helen prepare breakfast, Ava received a message from Samuel. It was short. Just one sentence. "Marcus leaves tonight." Ava froze. Her heart immediately began racing. "What is it?" Helen asked. Ava looked at the screen again. Tonight. After everything that had happened, Marcus was leaving. She had imagined many endings to their story, but somehow this one hurt the most. Hours later, as the sun began setting, Ava found herself driving toward the airport. She did not know exactly what she planned to say. She only knew one thing. If Marcus boarded that plane without hearing the truth from her, she might regret it for the rest of her life. And as she hurried through the crowded terminal searching for him, she finally spotted his familiar face near the departure gate. Marcus turned at the exact same moment. Their eyes met across the crowd. Then Ava took a deep breath and said the words neither of them expected. "Before you leave, there is something you need to know." For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The noise of the airport seemed to disappear as Marcus stared at Ava standing in front of him. He had imagined this moment 100 different ways during sleepless nights, but none of those versions looked like reality. Ava took a slow breath and stepped closer. "I almost did not come," she admitted quietly. Marcus swallowed hard. "Then why did you?" Ava looked down briefly before meeting his eyes again. "Because no matter how angry I was, I could not ignore what happened after the truth came out." Marcus said nothing. He simply listened. "You never tried to buy my forgiveness," Ava continued. "You never used your money to pressure me. You helped people when nobody was watching. You kept showing up, even when I gave you every reason to walk away." Emotion tightened in Marcus's chest. "I was the one who made the mistake." Ava nodded. "You did." The honesty made him smile sadly. Then she surprised him. "But people are more than the worst decision they have ever made." For the first time in weeks, hope appeared in Marcus's eyes. Around them, travelers hurried toward gates, and rolling suitcases echoed across the terminal floor. Yet neither seemed aware of any of it. "Does this mean you forgive me?" Marcus asked softly. Ava smiled faintly. "Not completely." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Fair enough." She stepped even closer. "Trust is not something you rebuild in a day." "I know. And I'm not interested in fairy tale promises." Marcus nodded immediately. "Neither am I." Ava looked at him carefully. "Then here is the truth. I still love you." Marcus closed his eyes briefly as relief washed through him. "Ava." She gently raised a hand. "But if we do this, we start over. No shortcuts, no pretending, no hiding. You have my word." "Good." Ava smiled. "Because I am willing to give us another chance." Marcus looked at her as if he could hardly believe what he was hearing. Then, without thinking, he pulled her into a hug. Ava laughed softly and hugged him back. For the first time in months, both of them felt the weight they had been carrying begin to lift. Marcus never boarded the plane that night. The project was reassigned. The city remained home. Over the following months, their relationship grew slowly, exactly as Ava requested. There were no grand gestures designed to erase the past. Instead, there were honest conversations, shared meals, long walks, and the gradual rebuilding of trust. Ava began attending nursing classes through the scholarship program. Helen proudly framed her acceptance letter. Jasmine never missed an opportunity to remind everyone that she had been right about Marcus all along, even though nobody believed that version of history. Life was not perfect, but it was real. 6 months later, Marcus returned home after a long day and found a small envelope resting on his kitchen counter. There was no note attached, only his name written across the front. Curious, he opened it. Inside was a photograph. The moment he saw it, he froze. Then he smiled. Tears filled his eyes almost instantly. A few seconds later, his phone rang. Ava's name appeared on the screen. Marcus answered immediately. Before he could speak, Ava laughed softly. "I thought you might have opened it by now." Marcus looked down at the photograph again and wiped his eyes. "Are you serious?" very serious. His smile widened. I do not even know what to say. Ava's voice became warm and emotional. Then just say, "You will be home soon." Marcus grabbed his keys without hesitation. "I am already on my way." And as he headed for the door, holding the photograph tightly in his hand, he realized that the greatest thing he had ever found was never money, success, or recognition. It was the chance to build a future with someone who finally knew every part of him and chose to stay anyway. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel.